אנחנו נלמד עכשיו מתוך שיעור תעש עם הרבש, נקרא מתוך תלמוד 10 הספירות.
We will now learn from a test lesson with Rabash. We will read from the study of the 10 Sefirot, volume 2, part 5. We're in item 41.
שוב, אנחנו נלמד מתוך שיעור תעש עם הרבש.
Again, we will learn from a test lesson with Rabash. We will read from the study of the 10 Sefirot, part 2, volume 2, part 5. Item 41, please.
אחר כך חזר להיות
Afterwards, it returned to being not Mati in Keter, and then it is Mati in Chokhmah. At that time, Binah was supposed to remain there in Chokhmah as in the beginning. But because of the light of Chesed in her place, she descends to be there with him. It is so because he desires mercy. And you already know that Binah is called he. When Binah descends in her place, Chesed does not need her, and he descends to his place, and is called Mati in Chesed. Then the light Gvura ascends in Chesed, and this is called not Mati in Gvura. At that time, the vessel of Gvura turns her interior downward and gives the 5 lights below in Tiferet. This is called Mati in Tiferet.
What's written here? We need to know why Chokhmah Binah are called Gar and Vak. And we also need to know why Chesed of Gvura is called Gar Devak. If we will know that they're called Gar Avak and Vak, then we can learn this rule, and it's divided between Binah and Chokhmah when there is no Chokhmah. When there's no Chokhmah in the vessel of Chokhmah. And also, when does it divide into Gvura and from Chesed? When there's no Chokhmah in the vessel of Chesed. Well, this is something we need to understand. If I were to look at Binah of direct light, we learn the opposite. When there's Chokhmah in the vessel of Chokhmah, then Binah wants Chasadim. It's truly the opposite of what's written here. We learned that after there is Chasadim, she goes to receive Chokhmah. If so, this rule that he says here needs to be clarified. We'll see after this. We learned there in the preface to the Wisdom of Kabbalah, if you remember, that's where you learned this, where he says this. Chokhmah. What is Chokhmah? His desire to do good to his created beings, which is called Keter, bestowed the abundance to the first Sefirah. The first Sefirah is called Chokhmah. What did it give him? A vessel. Existence from absence. It's called the desire to receive. And he also gives it light, 2 things together. Both the light and the vessel come from the side of the emanator. His desire to do good to his created beings, he created existence from absence, a kli, and also gave it the light. Why do we learn it this way? Since it's impossible, we see this in corporality, that a person would long for something that he's never seen or heard or tasted. Rather, after the Chokhmah received the light of Chokhmah, we learned that Chokhmah in its end felt that the light comes from the bestower, and she is a branch from the root, So each branch wants to resemble its root and also wants to be a bestower. Hence, Chokhmah in its end, rejected the light of Chokhmah and wants Chasadim to be able to bestow. Afterwards, after that we learn there that the light of Chasadim which comes to Binah has no place in Binah, as it nullifies there as a candle before a torch. Hence, Binah wanted for this light to be apparent, so she took it out from her, and it's called Zeranpin. And this Zeranpin, after it was revealed, he received a push from above out of the desire to do good to his created being, so that the lower ones will receive not in Zeranpin, only in expansion. Therefore, Zeranpin in its end extends the light extensively, expansively, and this is called to benefit his created beings, to do good to his created beings. And this is called the Malchut of all of reality. After the push from above came to do good to his created beings, and it caused her to want to receive in an expanded manner, then Malchut received the light in the manner of filling all of reality. She received an awakening of Binah, as the branch needs to resemble its root. So also Malchut wants equivalence of form. Hence Malchut said, I don't want to receive in order to receive, rather in order to bestow. We learned that by this there was a restriction. To receive in order to receive, she no longer receives, but rather receives according to a measure. To the extent in which she can intend in order to bestow, she will receive, and to the extent in which she cannot intend in order to bestow, she will not receive. And this is called a masach, a screen. And then we learn that since from the screen comes light of Chasadim, so Binah already receives Chokhmah. And all the cessation from receiving Chokhmah was that she didn't have Chasadim. Now he says she's receiving Chasadim from the screen more than she received from Keter. Why? Since light of Chasadim was bestowing in order to bestow, and here Chasadim are receiving in order to bestow. Hence, then Binah becomes anterior to anterior with Chokhmah, and since this is because she already has Chasadim. And when Binah has Chasadim, Chokhmah, that she received, then she already does not reject the Chokhmah, rather what? She receives Chokhmah. So the entire screen that was in Binah not wanting to receive Chokhmah, this caused Malchut to also not receive. So he says now that Binah does receive Chokhmah, so the rejection that was in Malchut that came from Binah was weakened. And by this he says that the screen was refined, because there it goes according to that line. That's what you probably connect to. But here we learn it in a different way. In the preface, he teaches in the pnimi and masbirot, he explains it more, that the cancellation of the screen was not, as we learn here, due to the surrounding light, but due to the internal light. What is inner light? What is surrounding light? Inner light, he says, from Bina. Bina that receives Chokhmah is called internal. Whereas that which comes by the screen is called surrounding light. Why? What's the meaning of surrounding light? This phase that is to be received in the future stands surrounding on the outside, awaiting to be able to be received inwards. Hence, it's called surrounding according to what is in the future to be received. It's fated to be received. What is he coming and saying? That each phase that was there in the manner of filling all of reality prior to the restriction, if we look at it in the form of a picture, he should have received 100 kilos of pleasure. Then when the restriction took place, when she receives a part, and that part that is received is called internal, and what the screen rejects outwards and it does not receive is called surrounding light, since it will be received later. Meaning that all the light that emerged in the world of Ein Sof prior to the restriction, that illuminated in receiving in order to receive, needs to be received in receiving in order to bestow. And all the light that is not revealed in all our one's reality, the goal has yet to be finished. Therefore, we learn that which we don't receive is in surrounding light. It turns out, where is the surrounding light here connected? In the screen. And to the extent in which screens then emerge and the reflected light, thus the light will be revealed in internality. Therefore, I call it surrounding. What is surrounding? The screen and the reflected light. That's what's connected to surrounding light. In the vessel of Binah, where she receives, she calls this internal. And then he says, why is the screen cancelled? The internal light annuls the screen. What connection is there between the inner light and the screen? So we learned, as we spoke earlier, I'm going to repeat it again. He says, after Chokhmah in its end saw that she is the receiver and she has and does not bestow, and the branch wants to resemble its root, hence she does not want to receive Chokhmah and wants Chasadim. That is called Bina. And then we learn there that the light of Bina that the light of Chasadim that comes to the vessel of Bina cancels also before Bina as a candle before a torch, because there is a right to exist for the light on its own. So he says, I was taken outwards from my degree. And this is called Zeranpin. That's how he says there. And then, Zeranpin in its end received an internal push from above, since his desire is to do good to its created being was not as far as the matter of Zeranpin, but in the expansion. Hence, in the end of Zeranpin, it wants to receive the light of Chokhmah like it was in the Kli of Chokhmah. And here we learn that it's already called the desire to receive because he's longing for a thing that he doesn't have. Hence, it's called a deficiency, and that's called a kli. Then he says, who caused the restriction? Here, see again, as we learned, Chokhmah in its end after receiving awakens that she wants equivalence of form, and that root that there is in Binah is revealed now in Malchut, and also Malchut now wants equivalence of form. And she says, I don't want to receive in order to receive, rather in order to bestow. To receive in order to receive, I don't want. It's called restriction, where the light departs. And in order to bestow, he does want. That's called that she went and extended the light in return. And she now receives according to a measuring line, which is the screen, which makes a calculation. How much she can aim in order to bestow, she will receive. And what she cannot aim in order to bestow, she will not receive. Then we learn by this screen in order to bestow, it's called reflected light. And when Bina receives reflected light, which is called light of Chasadim in order to bestow, he adds that there's a reflected light, as this reflected light has more Chasadim than it has from Bina. Why doesn't he say, after all, we could say that the Chasadim, they're only bestow in order to bestow. And though this light of Chasadim, he receives in order to bestow. Therefore, Bina goes and receives Chokhmah again. This is called internal light, Bina, and after Bina received the light of Chokhmah, she no longer rejects the light of Chokhmah. So the screen that was before standing in its authority to not receive due to Bina that does not receive, that is now weakened. The screen is weakened. If so, the light departed from who? From the vessel of Malchut. Why?
Comes, he says, and asks, and this needs to be a refinement in the screen, in the Rosh. We learn a refinement in the Guf. This one can still describe as he answers, since in the Rosh there was no discernible reception, only in potential. It is not applicable to say their departure. Therefore, this operates only in the Guf. He's permitted to ask more. If they receive, then I can say cease from receiving. Therefore, when I say Rosh is only in potential, it is not applicable to say the light departed. It is still not received. Therefore, we learn, where does the striking of the inner and surrounding lights take place? These forces of Bina and Malchut, how do they become revealed? At the time when they receive in actuality, which is called the Guf. This is how we can answer. For our matter, he learns here a principle. When do Gal separate from Vak? When there's no Chokhmah in the Gal. Then the Vak rises by name. For example, at the time when there is no Chokhmah in Chesed, then it's Vak. Gvura rises by the name of Chasadim. Therefore, at the time when there is Chokhmah in Chesed, Gvura ascends to Chesed and joins with it. Likewise, when do we learn that Chokhmah and Bina separate? At the time when there is no Chokhmah in Chokhmah.
We're going to move to the next part of the lesson, study between friends.